Get ready to go back in time because I'm going to take you back to the 80s as we count down 5 phenomenal songs from that decade that are severely underplayed today. Maximum velocity tracks that were hits in their day, but for whatever reason, they've gotten lost in the shuffle as the years have gone by. When you hear them, you're going to wonder why we don't listen to them more often, because they're just as good as some of the biggest songs of the 80s, including one that was written by an 80s rocker for a big-name 70s band, but they passed on it. And actually, a few bands passed on it, so the songwriter recorded it himself. And after it became a huge hit, the band who passed on it said they never actually heard the demo. Apparently, their label passed and didn't tell them. Then there's another song that was written about the singer's old high school girlfriend. The song inspired him to go track her down decades later, but it didn't go so well. Plus, I'm including my favorite song of all time in this countdown. Find out what these are coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever made a chain out of gum wrappers, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button and click the notification bell so you know when our latest videos and interviews come out. Make sure to go to professorofrock.com. We're building a whole community just for you. We have a live stream coming up as well. All right, today I've got another top 5 countdown for you. For this one, I'm putting 5 underrated 80s gems back in the spotlight. It's a show I'm going to call Damn Good. It's called Damn Good because these songs fire on all cylinders. There's nothing like it when you hear a song that you haven't heard forever and it's a banger and you just can't even concentrate because it's so good. These are songs that should be used more in pop culture and they ought to be added to your playlist or a mixtape, even better. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 5, I've got an old school band that made a comeback in the 80s with a scorcher. It's the Moody Blues with their 1986 hit, Your Wildest Dreams. You know, throughout their long career, the Moody Blues underwent a significant musical transformation. I mean, throughout the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, the Moodies evolved from an R&B band to pioneers of art rock and psychedelic to progressive rock to synth pop. I mean, between 65 and 83, the band released 11 studio albums and scored 5 top 15 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. Of course, their biggest came with the 1972 release of Nights in White Satin. That one reached number 2. Should have been a number 1 hit, let's be clear. Nights in White Satin. By the beginning of the 80s, though, the Moody Blues had adapted to the rise of new wave and began incorporating more synthesizers into their sound. Their 12th album, The Other Side of Life, would take full advantage of this trend. Produced by Tony Visconti, the record fused the Moody Blues' signature melodic storytelling with a more modern aesthetic, utilizing synthesizers and sequencers and drum machines. They're especially evident on the album's lead single, Your Wildest Dreams, written by Justin Hayward. Your Wildest Dreams, it's just a magical song. It emerged as a nostalgic love letter to past romances, capturing the magic of young love and the bittersweetness of growing older. The song was inspired by the idea of wondering what happened to someone that you loved in your youth. High school sweetheart, Hayward described the lyrics as being about the first girl you ever fell in love with, the one you really fell in love with that broke your heart, the one that you always wanted to know what happened to them. You wonder where they are. When you were mine, I remember. According to Hayward, Your Wildest Dreams set him on a personal journey to rediscover his own nostalgic past. He described it as fantastic, amazing, and disturbing. When he was asked if he meant trying to track down a girl from the past, Justin replied that he'd gone on a journey similar to that song, but he did decline to share details, just saying that. What is telling is that he also advised against it, saying that he had learned that you just can't really go home again. He said, and I quote, "You get all excited and you get off the bus and walk down the street and you realize, life is completely different. It's not fair on anybody to do that." Hayward also admitted that at first he thought Your Wildest Dreams would just be a throwaway track, but instead it became one of the band's catchiest and most enduring songs. It debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 on April 19, 1986, and it went to number 9 3 months later in July. Oh, I remember that. What a glorious summer. A lot of people forget it marked the Moody Blues' return to the top 10 for the first time since Nights in White Satin back in '72. Wildest Dream spent 21 weeks on the pop chart, the longest run for any Moody Blues single at all. The song also reached number 2 on the mainstream rock tracks chart, and it claimed the top spot on the U.S. adult contemporary chart, proving it had true cross-genre appeal. That's huge on all three. I gotta tell you, for my money, this is one of the catchiest songs of the 80s. It's just a feel-good ditty. It just brings joy. It reminds us why Nietzsche was exactly right when he said, without music, life would be a mistake. Indeed. All right, coming in at number 4, I got a top 10 hit for one of the biggest selling albums of the 80s, from one of the biggest artists of the 80s, but it's probably the one hit from that record that almost never gets played, and it has a hilarious music video. Talking about Phil Collins with Don't Lose My Number. Now, halfway through the neon decade, Phil Collins was already on his way to hijacking mainstream radio, even after multiple classic hits with Genesis and solo. The year 1985 was probably peak Collins, right? The year it really belonged to him. He completely blew up with his 12 times platinum solo LP, No Jacket Required. Then, of course, he ruled 1986 with Genesis' 6 times platinum, Invisible Touch. No Jacket Required became a cultural phenomenon, solidifying Phil Collins' status as a global superstar. Stacked with hits like Sussudio, One More Night, and Take Me Home, the album showcased Collins' versatility in crafting emotional ballads and undeniably upbeat danceable tracks. Don't Lose My Number, that fits more into the latter category, more of a rock song, actually. The song evolved organically during the recording sessions for No Jacket Required, growing from a riff and a melody that Phil had been toying with. He admitted that Don't Lose My Number doesn't have a definitive meaning. Its lyrics stem from his stream of consciousness writing style. But despite its lyrical ambiguity, the driving rhythm and catchy hooks made it an undeniable radio staple. And really, the song's theme is of not losing a phone number. People would laugh at that today, right? But that's something that we could all relate to back in the day, back in the 80s. I mean, Billy, don't you lose my number because you're not anywhere that I can find you. Steely Dan had Ricky, Phil Collins had Billy. I mean, losing a phone number in the 80s could be catastrophic. Ricky, don't lose that number. Am I right? There was no internet, there was no social media, no cell phones to store contacts. If someone misplaced that scrap of paper with your number on it, there's not an easy way to track you down. Losing a phone number, it was like losing a lifeline. I remember that a few times. What about you? Tell me in the comments. Don't Lose My Number peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it became No Jacket Required 3rd consecutive top 5 hit. Its success was also amplified by its tongue-in-cheek music video, which parodied popular movies and music videos of the day. Collins didn't ever take himself too seriously. He did a Western spoof, a samurai showdown, to a post-apocalyptic road warrior scenario. You can also catch references to The Police's Every Breath You Take, David Lee Roth's California Girls, and The Cars You Might Think, when Phil Collins put his head on an animated fly. All right, for the number 3 spot, I have an artist that's still selling out arenas, and he had his biggest album in 1984 into 1985, Bryan Adams with Run to You. Now, by 1984, Bryan Adams was 3 albums into his young career, steadily building a reputation as one of the most promising rock artists of the decade. With the help of his longtime songwriting partner Jim Vallance, Adams achieved his first platinum success a year earlier with his album Cuts Like a Knife.
Cuts like a knife.
But it was his 1984 album Reckless that catapulted him into superstardom. It was released on November 5th, 1984. That's why I said going into 85. Reckless would become a blockbuster. It sold 12 million copies worldwide. Great album. Produced by Bob Clearmountain, the album showcased Bryan Adams' ability to blend raw rock energy with mainstream pop appeal. Not an easy thing to do. The record boasted 6 top 15 singles in the US, including iconic tracks like the number 5 hit Summer of '69 and the number 1 ballad Heaven.
Back in the summer of '69, I'm finding it hard to believe we're in heaven.
But you know, my favorite has always been the atmospheric, dark, and unforgiving track Run to You. I mean, Bryan Adams' vocals on this are just magic. Not to mention the guitar playing of one Keith Scott. Keith Scott is easily one of the most underappreciated players out there, and Run to You might be his best lead work. It helps when you have a great song, in which Bryan Adams wrote with Jim Vallance, but man, what a guitar player. Run to You set the tone for Reckless being the first single out the door, and it established Bryan Adams as a powerhouse in both the rock and pop worlds. Like I said, not easy to do in the 80s. Run to You is a pretty blatant song about infidelity. It's sung from the perspective of a man who's caught between two relationships. Run to You was initially intended for a few other artists before Adams decided to record it himself. Actually, Jim Vallance recalled and said, in January of 1983, producer Bruce Fairbairn asked me and Bryan Adams to write a song for his next production project, Blue Oyster Cult. In search of inspiration, we listened to the band's catalog, including their biggest hit, Don't Fear the Reaper. The arpeggiated guitar riff that opens Reaper became our starting point. So inspired by Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, not an easy task, kind of a tall order there, Vallance and Adams spent an hour crafting their own riff, being inspired by that. Once it was solidified, the rest of the song quickly began to take shape. Then over the next few days, the duo refined the lyrics and the arrangement, and they focused really on the interplay between the bass and the drums and the central guitar riff, which is why the song is so incredible. However, the finished song was immediately met with rejection from Blue Oyster Cult. Vallance recounted how Fairbairn played the demo for Blue Oyster Cult only to receive the verdict. They don't like the song. It didn't fit the plan for their album. However, there's this. Decades later, Jim Vallance received an email from the Blue Oyster Cult bassist Joe Boucher. In it, he revealed that he had never even heard the demo back in the day. He said it was likely the band's management that shot it down without the band even hearing it. If the band would have heard it, maybe it would have been a huge hit right there with Burning for You in the 80s.
I'm burning for you.
Refusing to be discouraged, though, Bryan Adams and Vallance sent the song out to other bands as well. There was 38 Special. They also passed. But to be fair, even Bryan Adams himself wasn't convinced that the song was worth even recording. As Bob Clearmountain remembers, when he first heard Run to You, he thought it was pretty good, but Bryan was thinking about leaving it off the album altogether. Said Clearmountain, and I quote, Bryan was writing songs for other bands at the time. I remember riding around town in his car when I first arrived, and he was playing me, the demos. When we got to Run to You, he said, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this one. I don't even think I'm going to put it on the album. And I said, you're going to put that one on the album. It's a great song. Thank heavens for Clearmountain. That's exactly what happened. Released on October 18, 1984, Run to You became a pivotal moment in Adams' career. The song peaked at number 6 here in the US, and it topped the mainstream rock chart as well. Its evocative melody and driving rhythm made it an irresistibly catchy staple on radio playlists. Doing a quick check on Spotify, I noticed that Run to You is only 1/10 as many plays as Bryan Adams' most popular hit, Summer of '69. That one's closing in on 1.5 billion streams. Run to You also lags behind other hits like Heaven and Everything I Do It For You. But it's time to give this song some love. I did notice there's this really cool guitarist on Instagram that pretends like he's in the studio originally playing these songs, and you can really hear the guitar parts come to life. And he did this one, and I just love it. It just shows you how great this guitar, the wall of guitars on this song are. All right, taking the number 2 spot, the bridesmaid position, it's the slow hand Eric Clapton with his best song from the decade, the 1985 hit, Forever Man.
I'll try to be your forever man.
I just realized that my last 3 songs had come from 1985. I might be making some amends for not choosing these songs for my top 10 countdown. So by the mid-'80s, Eric Clapton's career was in a state of transition. He spent much of the late 70s grappling with personal struggles, including substance abuse, which had taken a toll on his music and his public image. While his work during that period, like Slow Hand, had critical and commercial success, Eric Clapton faced the challenge of staying relevant in the 80s, totally different decade. The music industry, had shifted towards slick, heavily produced sounds, and the rise of MTV and the popularity of synth pop and arena rock that left many artists from Clapton's generation struggling to adapt. But Eric Clapton, he did it.
How many times must I explain myself?
His 1985 album Behind the Sun featured Forever Man, and it marked a significant turning point in his career. It was his first record under a new contract with Warner Brothers, a label that had high expectations for him to deliver a commercially successful project. To meet these expectations, Clapton teamed up with none other than Phil Collins. He worked as the producer. Collins' contemporary production style infused the album with a more polished, radio-friendly sound, and it worked. It blended with Clapton's blues roots with, that 80s aesthetic. The partnership would allow Clapton to reach a broader audience without sacrificing his authenticity. Forever Man became a pivotal track in Clapton's reinvention. And just an infectious riff and a powerful delivery that demonstrated that Clapton could thrive in a changing musical landscape for sure. However, that being said, Forever Man wasn't actually written by Eric Clapton. It was actually written by Jerry Lynn Williams, a Texas-born songwriter who penned several tracks for Clapton during this period. Williams had a knack for crafting emotionally resonant yet accessible songs, and his collaboration with Clapton proved to be a perfect fit. Even though Clapton didn't write the song himself, it still carried themes that resonated with his personal and professional journey at the time. That's why it's such a great song. The lyrics of Forever Man that revolve around a plea for enduring love and commitment, asking, "Won't you be my forever woman? I'll try to be your forever man." Any rock star would have to say, "I'll try." Anyway, although not explicitly autobiographical, the song's themes of persistence and longing, those mirrored Clapton's own struggles with addiction and his determination to rebuild his life and his career. The track can be read as a symbolic anthem for Eric Clapton's resilience, especially as he emerged from a turbulent chapter with renewed focus and a real sense of purpose. Released as the album's first single, Forever Man peaked at number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100, but it hit number 1 on the mainstream rock chart.
Rebel man, rebel man, rebel man.
Most of all, Forever Man reestablished Eric Clapton as a force in the music industry, and particularly on the rock charts, where he would continue to score top 10 hits throughout the rest of the 80s into the 90s with songs like It's in the Way That You Use It, from Color of Money, Pretending, great song, Tears in Heaven, and Change the World, that were massive hits in the 90s. All right, we've made it to the top spot on today's countdown, and as I said at the very beginning, I'm going to share my favorite song of all time. Now, I do have to preface this greatest song ever discussion with the fact that I have 2 categories of my greatest songs ever. One is the list that I consider to be the greatest songs ever, and a list that are my personal favorite songs ever. Having said that, my personal favorite song of all time is Something About You by Level 42. I love this song. This song is magical. Okay, at the start of their career, Level 42 carved out a niche as a jazz funk fusion band known for Mark King's groundbreaking thumb slap bass technique and Wally Badaroo's innovative synthesizer work, and of course Mike Lindup's falsetto. Level 42's early sound was intricate and groove heavy. However, by the mid-'80s, their style had evolved to incorporate sophisti-pop and dance rock elements. This sonic shift helped the band achieve a broader appeal and set the stage for their commercial breakthrough. Now, that breakthrough came with their 1985 album, World Machine, a phenomenal album. It really showcased Level 42's knack for combining technical musicianship with smooth, accessible production. This song is spectacular with its infectious groove and its really polished production. Something About You is the perfect slice of mid-'80s pop. I mean, this is such a joyful, feel-good jam. Written by Mark King, Mike Lindup, Wally Badaroo, and the Gould Brothers. Something About You, it's just joy personified. I can't begin to tell you how many times this song has saved a shitty day. It's the ultimate bad mood killer. I was so pumped when I got a chance to interview the man who helped write it, helped bring the killer chorus to life with one of the best falsetto parts in music history, for my money. Here's what Mike Lindup shared about the song.
And then it was Mark that came up with the... And yeah, so and then I came up with it. Over the same sequence, which meant that when the because there's something about you, it's alright, they both work over that together.
Oh yeah, man, what a treat. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
And it was just the do 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 with the three chords, and sort of Phil came up with this because there's something about you as just those words, and we sort of presented it to Mark and Wally, and Mark had a demo studio at the top of his house, and he kind of worked on it with Wally, and he came up with the whole verse sequence with it and the so we sort of put those bits together, and then we needed a bridge, and I came up with the and often what happened is the music would come first, and then the melodic ideas with no lyrics, and then the lyrics would come last. And you listen to the song and think, oh, well, obviously the lyrics inspired the music, but it was always pretty much the other way around. This
song became the band's biggest hit, going to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. Should have been a number 1 hit. It also received heavy rotation on MTV thanks to its fun music video. But unfortunately, Something About You, it doesn't get anywhere near the recognition it deserves. It just gets overshadowed by more mainstream 80s upbeat hits like Aha's Take On Me or Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I mean, both are perfect songs, don't get me wrong. But so is Something About You. So do yourself a favor, go listen to it. I'll link to it below. So there you go, my 5 picks for damn good songs that are still underplayed, but still fire on all cylinders. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know below, what do you think of these 5? I'll actually link to all 5 of them. So you can either open your mind, put on a good pair of headphones. I swear, you'll have a great day because these are really great songs. They just make you feel like you're 20 feet tall and unstoppable. So what are your memories of these songs if you do remember them? And let me know what else you'd like to see on here. What other top 5s or top 10s should we cover? If you like our content, We invite you to be part of this community, the community on ProfessorRock.com. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.